What is the saddest thing that happened to an old school friend? My longtime friend left for the Army after high school. He was always willing to help people and do everything he can to make your day just a little bit better. On his third or so year, he came back to my hometown on leave and accidentally pulled out in front of a dump truck and got T-boned. He's been in a coma for over 3 months with a broken back and severe brain damage, but just said good afternoon to his mother yesterday.
That's a tough situation. It's hard to see someone who cared so much end up like that. The progress he made by just saying good afternoon gives a bit of hope. Hopefully, he continues to recover. It shows that even in tough times, there's always a chance for some small connection. You really don't know how things will turn out. Just keeping him in your thoughts can mean a lot.
She was my best friend in elementary school. We shared a hobby outside of school that meant spending a lot of time together and remained good friends through junior high. Though at school moved in different social circles, she was gorgeous and popular, me not so much. I moved away right before high school and didn't see her again, though we remained Facebook friends. Last year, she was found dead in her apartment by her parents after nobody had heard from her in a week. She died due to complications from an eating disorder, which I knew she had struggled with for a long time. It's heartbreaking to think of her dying alone that way.
That's a tough story. It's crazy how life changes over time. You had that connection in school, but things drifted. It's sad that she went through such a hard time, and it's a heavy feeling knowing she was alone at the end. Losing friends like that sticks with you. Life can be really unpredictable, and it makes you reflect on those relationships. Makes you think about how important it is to check in on people.
She died of cancer. We lost touch over a boy. Of all things, she had a crush on my high school boyfriend. She got cancer in her early 20s, lived for over 5 years, but ultimately lost the fight. She kept an online journal, which I eventually brought myself to read after she passed. The hopeful entries were the worst. For years, she was convinced she would get better.
That's a tough story. Losing a friend is never easy, especially under those circumstances. It's sad how sometimes small things can cause distance, and then life throws something so serious. Reading her journal must have been really hard, seeing her hope and optimism while knowing the outcome. It's a reminder of how fragile life is and how important it is to cherish the people we have.
A good friend of mine from high school went off and joined a frat in college. He was a good kid, didn't do drugs, rarely drank, good grades. As a pledge, he was driving a car for an older brother trying to find a parking spot. He was pulled over for expired tags. The cops found weed, cocaine, and Molly in the car. Even though it wasn't his drugs, he took the blame. 5 years in prison.
That's a tough story. It's wild how quickly things can turn for someone. He seemed like a solid kid, and then this happens. Taking the blame must have been a huge decision for him. 5 years is a long time, especially for something that wasn't his. It really makes you think about choices and the people you associate with. Life can be unpredictable like that.
A guy, let's call him, I went to high school with died because of a really bad hazing. It was on national news in my country, and my hometown was in an uproar over the incident. What's worse is his dad blames himself because he forced E to study a maritime course instead of an engineering course considering he was a math whiz.
That's a tough situation. It's sad when things like this happen. E's dad seems to be going through a lot of guilt, and it's never easy to process that. Hazing can have serious consequences, and it should never be taken lightly. It's a harsh reminder of the pressures young people face. I hope the community can come together to support each other during such a difficult time.
One of my best friends from college was a morbidly obese girl that was kind of screw up. After we graduated, she met a guy and fell in love, and he completely changed her life around. She lost about 100 pounds, got her nursing license, and seemed really happy. One day out of the blue, there was a freak accident and he died. They were 25. She's kept herself together since, probably better than I could, but it broke my heart for her that she had the love that everyone looks for, and it was taken from her so soon.
That's a tough situation. It's wild how life can turn so fast. She managed to turn things around and find happiness, which is inspiring. Losing someone you love like that at such a young age is hard, though. It shows a lot of strength that she's kept going. It's sad to think about what she had and lost, and it really makes you appreciate the moments you have with people.
It's not nearly as sad as most, but my closest childhood friend, we went our separate ways in middle school. Never did anything with her life, and is just in an endless cycle of still lives with parents, meets guy, moves in with guy for a few months, things go bad, moves back in with parents. No job other than a few part-time stints at grocery stores. No car, no own place to live, nothing besides several brief relationships. It's a small town, so it became pretty public knowledge when she had spread an STD around too. My other childhood friend ended up joining a cult-like religion. Think Duggar type, marrying a man 25 years older than her, and immediately began popping out babies. So many girls I knew as a kid ended up having babies before their 21st birthday. These stories are pretty tame compared to most, but it's still pretty sad considering I was the bad one as a kid, and I turned out the most normal/well-adjusted of my group of friends.
It's interesting how life turns out, isn't it? While you were labeled the bad one, it sounds like you found a different path. Your friends seem stuck in a loop, struggling with their choices. It's not uncommon to see people stay in familiar patterns, even when they're not happy. The contrast between your life and theirs makes you realize how personal growth can take many forms. It's all about the choices we make along the way.
Maybe not as sad as other situations. I ran into a friend years after graduation. We got to talking, and I found out she was moving and offered to help. A few days later, we got to her house, and I was shocked. She was living with a low-life boyfriend in a trashy apartment that they could no longer afford. All the furniture we moved was shabby and broken. Stained and ripped couches, broken dressers, missing drawers, nasty-looking mattresses on the floor. When I had known her, she lived with her parents in a nice house. The kind that had a fancy living room for company and then a family den for actual use. Beautiful dining room with dinner served on rare china. That sort of house. I don't know what happened to change her life so. But it was so sad I still think about it 10 years later.
It's wild how life changes. Running into her brought back memories of that nice house. Now, seeing her in that rundown place with someone who didn't seem good for her was rough. You think you know how people end up, but sometimes it's just unexpected. I still wonder what caused the shift. It's a reminder that life can take turns we don't see coming, leaving a lasting impression.
The saddest thing that happened to someone I know from school is nothing. He never did anything. After high school, when everyone went off to college and got jobs and whatever, he didn't. He stayed at home with his parents. They're past retirement age, but they still work to support him. He got very, very fat. Already was a little chunky back when I knew him, and just hangs out at home all day as far as I know. He plays video games, watches TV, basically has all of the same interests he did in high school, even though it has been years. And of course, he has no romantic or social life. I avoid him whenever I go home to visit family because he always wants to meet, read, drink in someone's basement, and have these reliving the good old days moments where all we do is talk about things that happened years and years ago. Because those are the only good memories he has. So, even though people from my class have died, become drug addicts, etc., this one is still the saddest.
That's a tough situation. It's hard to see someone you know just kind of fade away like that. It's like he's stuck in the past while everyone else moves on with their lives. I guess it makes sense that you avoid him. Those good old days moments can feel heavy when they don't lead to anything new. It's a reminder of what could have been and what he missed out on.
Let's go with a combination of sad and funny. Old friend who's been in the Air Force for about 8 years now had ISIS hack his Facebook account a few months ago. I'm not sure what the end game is in that case. All they did was post random Arabic messages. They didn't change any of the pictures or settings. I'm just picturing like a little 12-year-old terrorist hunched over a phone screen all day cackling to himself because he's spreading the good word of Allah through the massively influential social network known as Facebook.
That's an odd situation. Your friend serves in the Air Force, and then ISIS gets all serious about hacking. Just posting random messages, though. Seems a bit lackluster for a group with that reputation. I guess there's something humorous about imagining a kid taking over a Facebook account, trying to make a statement but not really knowing how to do it effectively. It's sad but kind of funny at the same time.
One of my best friends from elementary school went to visit his grandparents in Russia. When he and his parents were returning to America, the Russian authorities didn't let him leave. This was around 2005. His parents were forced to leave, so my friend had to stay with his grandparents. 10 years later, and I still haven't seen him since. Edit. This happened just after I finished first grade, and I wasn't aware of what was happening at the time and didn't find out where he went until about 3 years ago. I also know that his parents moved away, possibly to Russia, from where I live several months after this happened. I am pretty sure he was a citizen of Russia and a permanent resident of America, though I could be mistaken.
That's a wild story. Losing contact with a close friend like that must be tough. It's strange how life can take such unexpected turns. You think you're going to see someone again, then they just disappear for years. It's even wilder knowing he might have been stuck there because of his citizenship. You never really forget about those childhood friends, even when time and distance pull you apart.
Joined an evangelical church shortly after high school and distanced himself from his lifelong friends. Approached one of us in a store parking lot and called her an agent of Satan while preaching to her from his Bible. He was one of my dearest friends, and we were a close group and always a positive influence on him. But he was easily swayed and sadly abandoned his old life for this new one.
It's strange how people change. A friend of mine got into a church and turned on us. I remember seeing him in a parking lot, preaching and calling one of our friends an agent of Satan. We were all pretty close, but something got to him. He just left everything behind, even us. It's tough to watch someone you care about change like that, especially when you thought you were helping him.
I set my best friends up, 2 of them, with girls they were afraid to ask out in high school. Turns out the girls didn't like them hanging out with me. We are all 38 to 40 now, and I see them in passing. 20 or so years later, and we haven't really hung out since high school. I was in both weddings, though. Edit. Both married the girls. One's been married 20 years, the other about 16.
That's interesting how things turn out. You tried to help them, but sometimes it doesn't work out the way we expect. It's funny to think about high school dynamics still affecting adult relationships. At least you got to be part of their weddings, which is a nice touch. Life takes people in different directions, but those memories stick around, even if you don't hang out anymore.
I'll be as concise as possible. Best friend from childhood, brilliant guy. Excelled at the sciences, math, and went on to obtain a BS in mechanical engineering with a minor in physics. Had the opportunity to take it further and possibly expound on his earlier dreams of being an inventor. At some point, he fell in with this overweight, much older man who has effectively driven everyone close to him away from him, and now they live together. Last I heard from his brother, he has a plan for some kind of beer brewing business, but is completely oblivious to what his friend, Loa, is doing to everyone that cared about him. The sad part is seeing how someone so brilliant and driven earlier on in life could wind up not following their dreams.
It's tough seeing a friend drift away like that. He had so much potential and ambition. It's a shame that this connection with an older guy has led him down a different path. A beer brewing business sounds interesting, but it feels like he's lost sight of what really mattered. It's just disappointing to see someone you care about not pursue their dreams anymore. You hope someday he realizes what he's missing.
High school best friend got engaged to a guy from Saudi Arabia. They moved away and he forbid her from speaking to me because I wasn't Muslim, she wasn't either, but that didn't stop him from fucking her. Last time I saw her was in 1987. I searched for her by her maiden name, potential married name, birth date, etc. at least once per year. Nothing. Absolutely nothing. It's like she never existed.
It's tough when someone you care about just vanishes like that. You think you know someone, then they make choices that change everything. It's been years, and you still search, hoping to find a hint, a trace of where she is now. It feels strange to hold on to memories of someone who seems to have disappeared into thin air. You wonder what her life is like, but it's all a mystery.
My best friend from middle school/high school is pretty much routinely in and out of jail for drugs the past few years. The saddest part is he comes out of jail looking 100% better every time. Gaining weight and stuff, but he can never stay clean more than a few months and usually starts getting caught breaking into houses and whatnot. I try to have faith in him, but he always goes back to the shit. Even after he claims he's found God and all that bullshit. He never learns.
It's tough watching a friend go through that cycle. You want to support them, but it feels like they never truly want to change. They get their act together for a bit, then the old habits come creeping back. It's disappointing when they keep making the same mistakes, despite the promises. You try to stay hopeful, but it's a hard situation. I guess sometimes, you have to protect your own peace too.
She died of cancer last month. I saw her 2 times in the last 5 years because her boyfriend got it into his head that there was something going on between us. There never was. She was just the best person I've ever met and maybe the best friend I've ever had. She confided in me several times that she was unhappy with him when we met up in secret. But they got married last year, and that effectively ended any chance we had of being friends. Throughout her whole ordeal, years of cancer, I couldn't see or speak to her. I knew she would eventually die, and now she has. I don't understand how she let him ruin our friendship, and now I never will.
It's tough to deal with losing someone like that, especially when you feel their partner got in the way. It's sad to think about the friendship that could have meant so much but was cut short by circumstances. You were there for her when she needed a friend, and it's tough to accept that she felt trapped and unhappy in her relationship. It's a heavy feeling to carry for sure.
In high school, I had 2 acquaintances that were identical twins, both of which were your typical all-American style kids. Straight A's, star football players, well-known community members, you get the idea. Well, the summer after senior year, they were at a college party visiting some friends. Brother A gets jumped outside the frat house by a couple of drunk college kids. Brother B sees this and comes over to help him out, grabs one of the kids, and lays him out cold with one punch and kicks him while he is on the ground. Fight gets broken up, everyone goes about their business. A few weeks later, Brother B finds out the kid he punched never woke up, spent a few weeks in coma. Kid finally wakes up, no real problems, leaves the hospital a few weeks later. Brother B goes to court for assault. Under the attorney's advice, pleads no contest with the understanding that his reputation and young age would help him out and he would get off with some community service, etc. Judge slaps him with 8 years in prison. Spends the next 8 years in San Quentin and Pelican Bay.
That's a pretty wild story. It's crazy how one moment can change everything. You think you're just helping out a brother, and then it snowballs into a huge deal. Brother B probably never imagined his life would take that turn. Makes you think about responsibility in those situations. Life can hit hard and fast, and sometimes it feels like there's no way to see it coming. It's a tough lesson.
Just this past weekend, I looked up a friend I hadn't seen since 8th grade. His mother had set up a Facebook page for him a few years back to draw attention to the nursing home she said was abusive towards him. He was apparently diagnosed with MS, and his health spiraled down fast. He died a couple years ago at 34. That is insane.
That's a heavy story. It's tough to think about people you've lost touch with, especially when they go through such hard times. Life can change really quickly, and it puts everything in perspective. Sometimes we take for granted how fragile things can be. It's a reminder to appreciate the people in our lives while we can. Makes you think about reaching out more often.
I went to a conservative Christian school. People were kicked out for looking at someone of the opposite sex too long. One guy was kicked out for having the movie up on his computer. I wasn't allowed to come back the next year because I was caught watching Inception when I was supposed to have turned to my computer for the night. They kick people out for nothing. A guy and girl were kicked out because the child of a staff member told her parents that she saw them kissing behind a shed. No evidence at all. The guy was 2 months from graduation.
That sounds intense. I can't imagine getting kicked out for stuff like that. It seems so strict and unfair, especially for a movie like Inception. Losing a chance to graduate over a rumor is just over the top. Makes you wonder about the priorities in some schools. Glad you made it out of that situation, though. It's wild how some rules can really impact lives.
Damn. Reading through these comments, I kind of get an eerie realization how many class clowns and people that generally seem really positive and satisfied with life end up backing into drugs and such. Reminds me of that saying about how melancholy men are always witty. Is the sadness, the difficulty, what makes the good times good?
It's interesting how that works. You see the funny ones often hiding deeper issues. I had a friend like that, always joking around but struggled with his own stuff. When he let his guard down, it was a different story. Made me realize that those moments of laughter can sometimes mask what's really going on inside. Life's weird like that. The highs really do feel more special after some lows.
Man, that is a tough one. Happened to me not so long ago. This guy was varsity football type, girls all over him. That type of thing. I stopped by a gas station and saw a guy standing by the door asking for change. This is very common where I live. Thought nothing of it and walked inside. I come out and this guy turns around and starts to ask me for change and suddenly stops mid-sentence. You could see the recognition sweep over his face, followed by the shame. He is a few years older than me, but we knew each other in high school. I actually stayed and talked to him for a few minutes. Said he'd gotten a scholarship, but when he got to college, he just couldn't keep up. Got into crack through some friends, and here he stands. I didn't know how to process that. I gave him a $50 and bought him a pack of smokes and haven't seen him since. John, if by some chance you read this, I hope things are better for you, buddy.
That's a heavy story. It's wild how life can take turns you don't expect. We all knew someone who seemed to have it all, then struggles hit hard. It can be tough to see a friend in that kind of situation. The fact you took a moment to talk and help out shows a lot. Life's unpredictable, and sometimes it's just about being there for each other, even if it's just for a little while.
If it makes you feel better, I have internet adopted a Russian kid that is living in LA. I sent him gift cards for pizza when his parents leave him home alone. He was 15 when this first started. I met him in WoW. Funny though, his parents got divorced, his mom remarried, and now his new stepdad is actually trying to be a dad to him. He's now 23, and he probably should be at least out getting a job, but he's being pretty stubborn, but mostly because he has no clue. His parents didn't teach him anything. They either locked him in his room, or they would leave for weeks at a time, leaving him locked alone in his room. He's just now getting a driver's license. They gave him an ultimatum to get a job. go into the American Army, or get sent back to Russia to live with his grandparents, which would require him to put in 2 years of military service. Russian government requires all males to put in 2 years of service. He's like the son I never had. I guess I'll never understand Russian parents.
That's an interesting situation. It's kind of wild how gaming can connect people like that. Helping him out with gift cards is a nice gesture. It sounds like he's had a rough upbringing, being isolated like that. The pressure from his parents must be tough, too. It's good that he has you to support him, even if he's feeling lost. That relationship probably means a lot to both of you. It's a unique bond for sure.
I have 2 girls, and I hope to Christ that they never, ever feel there's anything they can't tell me. Yes, I will be upset at certain things, but I don't care what it is or what they have done. I will always choose to have them alive and coping together best we can rather than gone for good. Sad face. So many sad stories on this thread. This one scares me most.
I get that. It's important for kids to feel safe sharing their struggles. No parent wants to hear bad news, but being there for them matters more. Having open lines of communication can make a big difference. It's tough thinking about those sad stories, but it's real. Just hoping for the best for your girls and that they always know you're there for them.
Similar story. He lost both legs and half his arm to an IED in Afghanistan. Was recovering well for 2 years and was just getting prosthetics and learning to walk again. Proposed to his high school sweetheart, who had stuck with him through everything without even flinching. On Christmas Day, he was found dead unexpectedly in his bed one morning. Honestly, one of the saddest stories I've ever seen unfold.
That's a tough one. It's hard to process someone overcoming so much, only to have life take a turn like that. The strength of his relationship with his sweetheart is powerful, but it makes the loss even heavier. You'd think after everything he'd get a break. Life can be really unfair and unpredictable, and stories like this stick with you. It's a reminder to appreciate the moments we have.
I don't know. Sometimes hope is the thing that keeps other people close. When you lose hope, others lose hope, and then you're just a sad bunch of people. My dad died of cancer and was hopeful to the end. On his deathbed, he basically told us he had held out hope because we needed that, and he did it for us. He asked us to stop hoping and just let him go. And we did.
That's a heavy story. Losing a parent is tough. It's interesting how hope can tie people together. Your dad's approach shows a lot of strength. Sometimes, holding on to hope feels like a burden for everyone involved. Letting go can be hard but also necessary. It's a deep reminder of how relationships work, especially in tough times. Emotions can shift dramatically when someone we care for is in pain.
My aunt has MS. She takes a lot of vitamins and does other sorts of treatment, but her doc gave her 5 years. She did drugs after abandoning the college and married my uncle. Then both of them got clean and had a child. This is kind of off topic, but all she does is to sit in a couch, shit-talk people, and complain about her internet connection. It's a really sad way to live your last years, though.
It's tough to see someone you care about go through that. Life takes unexpected turns, and it sounds like she's been through a lot. The couch life and complaining can feel pretty draining for everyone involved. It's just hard to watch someone lose their spark like that. Hope she finds some peace and maybe even a hobby that brings her joy, even if it's small.
Just to be clear, MS is not always like that. My wife was diagnosed right after we got married. She has episodes of numbness and sometimes cannot see out of one of her eyes, but she lives a very normal life otherwise. She does take medication and has taken both pills and injections. It's all about attitude too, in my opinion. Her aunt died from MS, so she is very determined to fight it.
It's good to hear your wife is managing her condition well. MS can be tough, but it sounds like her determination makes a big difference. It's interesting how a supportive attitude can really impact how someone copes with health challenges. Everyone has their struggles, and it's how we handle them that defines us.
Something similar happened to my mother's school friend. She ran into her years later after she had dropped off the face of the earth and jokingly asked if the Moonies had gotten her. Her old friend looked shocked and asked who told her. Turned out she'd been sucked into that cult for years, and her parents spent a fortune on specialists to kidnap her from the cult and deprogram her from all the brainwashing. It's tragic, but at least in the end they got her back.
That's a pretty intense story. It's surprising how life can take people in unexpected directions. The friend got caught up in something so far from what you'd imagine, and it took a lot for her family to bring her back. It's a reminder to keep connections strong, even when life gets busy. Some stories really highlight the lengths people will go for those they care about.
I have a friend that I work with in California. He is a young black man who grew up in Chicago. He has countless stories of friends being shot and killed. He himself was shot 4 times while waiting for a bus. The reason? Being caught in the wrong neighborhood. He takes me on virtual tours around the area. He grew up using Google Street View. It's like a war zone. Several times in the last couple of years, he shows me news stories of new shootings, and it is friends of his who have been shot and are killed. Makes me sad.
It's tough to hear those stories. My friend's experiences really put things in perspective. The way he talks about his past, it feels so real yet distant for me. Those virtual tours make you understand the struggles he faced. It's hard not to feel sad knowing that violence has become so normal for him. It definitely opens your eyes to the issues people go through every day.
Grew up in a poor neighborhood, multi-ethnic. One kid is homeless. His sister is successful, basketball scholarships for .0 grades. One kid is now a drug kingpin and weapons smuggler, dishonorable discharge. His brother is a cop on Brooklyn after a successful Air Force career. One kid is playing college football right now. His cousin is dead. My brother is in and out of trouble too. It's amazing how polarizing the hood is. Edit. Cop and drug, dude, don't live on the same side of the country. They don't talk, and dude's been to prison already for it. I think he stopped with the weapons. For sure I know he's a struggle rapper right now.
It's wild how different paths can emerge from the same place. You see kids making it big while others fall into crime. It's like every corner has its own story. The contrast between a successful sibling and someone struggling or in trouble really shows how life can be. People can end in such different spots even if they started in the same rough neighborhood. Just goes to show, you never know what happens next.
Because love/infatuation can make people do stupid things. I have a cousin who is beautiful, intelligent, and not one to be bossed around. She was set up to graduate high school a year and a half early and already set up to enter college at 17. But instead she dropped out 2 months before graduation to run away with a white trash dumb shit that would get drunk and beat her. She ran away with this loser because she couldn't bring him around the family after the first time he gave her a black eye, mainly due to the fact that she was well aware we probably beat him to death. No one understood what she saw in him. He was fugly as hell, dumb as dog's hit, super lazy, and is covered in ridiculous evil clown tattoos. Ended up having 3 kids with him before they broke it off for good. She is now a mother of 3 at 25 years old, while working full-time at a law firm and finishing up her bachelor's. And just like before this several year bout of dumbassery, she is rocking at it.
People can really surprise you with their choices. I know someone like that. My cousin had everything going for her. Smart, pretty, heading to college early. Then she threw it all away for a guy who was clearly bad news. It was a mess. He treated her badly, but she still went for it. Fast forward, she's a single mom of 3 now, working hard and finishing school. It's a wild turn, but she's doing well.
Please consider subscribing if you enjoyed. Love.